Good morning, everybody. Today's proceedings will be live streamed after the usual 10-minute delay. Those with mobile devices may use them to report what they hear to the outside world, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. They may not be used for recording or photography. Yes.
118, yesterday we were beginning to talk about your transition from your deployment into globalised resistance in relation to reporting on the dissent network. You described, and we covered in some detail, the compromise. After that compromise, did that lead to a different approach by you in relation to your spying?
I don't think so, not as a direct result of the compromise. It was always in my mind because I was, I was very aware that as I started attending meetings which were more dissent-focused and getting around the network, that at any moment I could be challenged because of the previous compromise.
Globalised resistance, you were on the steering committee, you describe yourself as webmaster, and so you're very much involved, or you were very much involved in globalised resistance. Did you ever have such a similar role for the rest of your deployment?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And so, in terms of your reporting, were you more on the periphery, more on the edges of various actions?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. By the time I was moving sideways and retasked, the dissent network, the core organising group on that were well established, and it was a bit late in the game to try and get the same level, I suppose, of close relationship that I'd enjoyed previously.
So in that respect, was it the second part of your deployment very different from the first part?
It was.
You described yesterday dissent being a network. What did you infiltrate of that network? So in terms of globalised resistance, very clear you infiltrated globalised resistance, and we've covered what you did. But could you just help us with the specifics of what precisely you did in relation to dissent?
Yes, of course. And it might be useful to understand that I realised it was going to be a very different type of deployment almost immediately because of the fact that it was a network. It was decentralised and organising was already well established, and it was clear that was going on not in a London-centric way, but across the UK and Europe. I sought a meeting with the C Squad, who were monitoring it, just to sort of try and establish the way forward. Made an effort to try and deconflict, because I was aware by that stage that there were probably other UCOs out covering various parts of work which might overlap, and I was quite keen that we didn't duplicate our efforts. But it was quite apparent that it wouldn't be possible to get up sort of tight, close and personal to a core group of people. In my early meetings, or just attending open meetings that were being organised at various spaces, it was clear that group was quite tight, was quite cliquey. And I just didn't feel it was going to be possible to get right up alongside them.
So you're talking about open meetings, and of course this is a time, 2004 onwards, people are using year on year, the internet more and more, so there's more information available online. In relation to justification, does the justification for your deployment drop right down? Because if you're attending public meetings, if you're accessing material on the internet, it doesn't require the skills of an undercover officer, does it?
Well, I think there was still a lot of utility in becoming, a familiar face, if that makes sense. I never, with the amount of time that was available before the G8 actually happened, which was only, realistically 6 months away, it was immediately apparent to me that it was going to have to be a case of getting round to as many of the convergent spaces and places where this organising was taking place, and just hopefully becoming a familiar face, who was going to be able to have conversations in the bar afterwards and get tight to two or three people, or tight-ish, and then have access to some of the closed email lists and things that were flying about. But it absolutely was probably the first mobilisation, I would say, there was probably more information flying around on the internet.
Now, I want to explore what you've said about being a familiar face, becoming a familiar face, but before I do, something you said a couple of minutes ago is that when you were reorientating your deployment, you had discussions with C Squad not wanting to overlap with any other undercover operation?
Yes.
Now, may I ask you specifically about the NPOIU? Were you briefed about the presence of NPOIU UCOs?
I was. I don't think it was quite at that stage, but certainly that there. I remember that word came back quite early on that there was at least one officer deployed from the NPOIU into this specific area.
And did you know who they were?
No, not at that stage. I became aware relatively soon after that.
Did you ever meet any of them?
Yes.
And when you met them, was that in undercover as Simon Wellings, or was it outside that context?
It was as Simon Wellings undercover.
All right. I'm going to come back to who you met in the NPOIU, because you said that came later.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to ask if we could please turn up MPS 0073489. Sir, this is at your tab B106. It's in volume 3, please. Now, 118, this is a document you can see from the top right, SDS note dated towards the end of your deployment, April 2007. But it does contain information about your deployment. Firstly, this document, are you familiar with this document?
No, I don't recognise this at all.
It's a document in your witness pack. If we just go through it then, can you see it says UCO Ring Wraith Access Document?
I can, yes.
So that's you, UCO Ring Wraith, yes?
Yes.
All right. Now, if we just go through this document seeks to briefly detail the individuals and groups to which UCO Ring Wraith has access for the purpose of intelligence reporting. It is prepared for use in advance of the 2007 German G8 and as such deals specifically with the potential for intelligence reporting around that event. As I'm reading this, there's no familiarity with this document. This is new to you. All right. In very general terms, UCO Ring Wraith has excellent access to a very broad swathe of the autonomous extreme left wing, both in the United Kingdom and in mainland Europe. I just want to explore this document in terms of, firstly, its accuracy. And again, in terms of that last sentence, excellent access to a very broad swathe of the autonomous extreme left wing in the United Kingdom. Again, given the date of this, April 2007, is that fair and accurate, or is it exaggerated?
It's exaggerated.
It's exaggerated, okay. She enjoys a lesser degree of access to the more organised left, that is, those groups that organise themselves along party lines or employ hierarchical forms of organising. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
As will be understood immediately, this leads to a vast amount of overlap with individuals or affinity groups, often organising within numerous structures or networks. And then the following table attempt to take that into account. I just want to go through with you just some of what is set out here, because this is about, or on the face of it, a description of your deployment. And it begins by referring to the Descent Network. Now, pausing there, the second part of your deployment after globalised resistance, Was that the main focus of your undercover work, the Dissent Network?
At that time, yeah, absolutely, and going forward.
So we can see that it is the first example that's given here. Excellent, comprehensive and in-depth access to, it says at this point, the remnants of UK Dissent Network. UCORW was at the heart of this organisation. Efforts to oppose the 2005 Gleneagles G8 and is equally well placed now. Now, in terms of that description, is that again an exaggeration when it describes you at the heart of this organisation?
Yeah, it is. I wasn't at the heart of it at all.
How would you describe it? If this, for example, was an honest, accurate document, if there was a heading Dissent Network, how would you have phrased it in relation to the degree of access? Because we can see that's the heading of the column, explanatory notes and degree of access. What would the accurate description have been?
I think it would be that I was someone who was kind of on the scene, part of a small affinity group, somebody who could, I mean, a lot of these places, of course, anybody can walk into and anybody's welcome, but somebody who wouldn't be challenged, I suppose, if I turned up at a organising meeting. I had become close to a couple of people in sort of South London who were involved with Dissent as well. I, quite early on in Dissent, I made contact with people sort of on the TAT or the organising groups, transport, just getting stuff. I was asked to pick up leaflets a couple of times and take them to various squats and drop off. I took boxes and boxes of stuff up to the sort of pre-camp. You'll be aware that I'm sure that there was a gathering about 3 months before the actual G8. I think I was someone who wouldn't be challenged, in turning up for organising meetings. Probably a very forgettable face, quite frankly.
So a very forgettable face, and we'll come onto it in due course, but has your attention been drawn to, it's a statement that has been recently produced. I just want to bring it up on screen now, if we may. It's referred to as the collective statement. It's at UCPI 39749. I wonder if you can please bring that document up. So you can see the way in which it's headed, collective statement in response to documents relevant to your deployment. I wonder if we can just go to the penultimate page, please. So we can see there that this is a document that's been signed on behalf of a number of people. And I just want to go through so that you're aware of who's contributed to this document. It's relevant to what's said in it. So you can see Donald O'Driscoll, Kate Wilson. Please can we turn over the page? It's got Anthony Thompson, Ben Leamy, Cherry Gibbons, Eleanor Fabreda, Emily Apple, Guy Taylor, Indra Don Francesco, Jason Kirkpatrick, Jay Jordan, Kim Bryan, Martin Shaw, Noel Douglas, Paul Chatterton, person we're calling PWE, Tom Fowler, person we're calling VSP, Zoe Young. Now those names, you're familiar with
some of them, yes. Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Now, in relation to the document that we were looking at before, and I wonder if we could please go back to MPS 007 3489, so B106 again. So I just want to ask you about, again, going through this document for accuracy, and you've already made clear this is not your document, but there are a number of comments in the statement that we've just looked at. Now, we were looking at the Dissent Network on page 1. Can you see the next row is the London Action Resource Centre, LARC, and the Rampart Social Centre? Because here it says you, RW, is a well-known face at both of these venues. often used for organising meetings and social fundraisers by a wide variety of groups drawn from the autonomous left. And again, it's the same question. Is that accurate in relation to Lark and Rampart?
I went to both those places half a dozen times, so I wouldn't say I was a well-known face, no.
So in terms of what was set out in the statement that we just looked at, in response to this particular paragraph, it is said that is untrue, and the authors of that statement say, we accept that he may have turned up at some of the hundreds of social events or even some of the meetings hosted in these spaces. However, to say he was a well-known face is significantly overstating the reality. Well known to who is the response. And so is that a fair response to this, to say that it's significantly overstating the reality?
A well-known face is somewhat subjective, but yes, probably.
All right, thank you. I wonder if you can just turn over the page, please. I'm not going to go through every example here. The space hijackers. And so, again, is that the space hijackers? Did they feature in the second part of your deployment?
I don't think so, not very much. I mean, much more in the first phase. I won't name them, but his name's I know Robin and his partner relatively well. Globalised did quite a lot of their work in organising in there. I think it was at Limehouse Town Hall. We built the orange and pink tank that we discussed yesterday briefly in their space.
So in terms of prop building in the globalised resistance days, rather than after your expulsion from there, is that right?
Yes.
So, and again, we remind ourselves of when this document, this SDS note was produced, April 2007. This is 3 years after you left Globalize. So when it says very good access to this autonomous situationalist group currently organising for May Day and mobilising for the G8 summit, particularly good access to their de facto leader, Robin Priestley, and privacy. And so in relation to that, is that out of date?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I think if I reached out to Robin, I've been able to have a good conversation with him, unless he was cited on the GR compromise and just hung up, but yeah.
Okay. Now, if we just drop down a couple of rows in this document, clandestine insurgent rebel clown army, circa. So again, I just want to ask you about the description which is given of your deployment. Very good access to this collective that will inevitably be of interest at the German G8 because of their very high visibility and tactic of clowning confrontation with frontline police units. RW was at the founding meeting of this group. Just pausing there, is that correct?
I was definitely at an early meeting. I couldn't confirm if it was the very first one. I certainly did a training there, or a clown workshop, quite early on. But perhaps to add some clarity to that, I remember that when I initially had conversations, because conversations were ongoing, with the squad and about the way to tackle the G8 generally, I was basically indicated to me that there was, or was going to be, good access to that group, and I could back off completely from it.
Okay. Just to continue with this paragraph. So RW was at the founding meeting of this group and took part in their first trainings as they prepared for the Gleneagles G8. Good personal relationships with Isa Fremo, one of the collective's founder activists, and, to a slightly lesser degree, with her boyfriend John Jordan, who is the de facto leader of the group. Now, we can go to it if necessary. In that collective statement that we were looking at paragraph 56, it says this: J. Jordan categorically states that neither he nor his partner recall Wellings in any way. We have no memory of him at all, And in terms of what you said about being forgetful, does that make... Can you help us with this? Because here there's a description of you having a good personal relationship with these people. And then we have a statement saying that they categorically state that neither he or his partner recall you. So which is correct?
I didn't have a good, in-depth personal relationship with Isa at all. I met her perhaps 2 or 3 times after I can't remember where event, and probably had a drink with her amongst a group of other people, but it wasn't anything more than that, really.
This is an SDS note in April 2007.
Yes.
Now, by that stage, what was happening in the SDS that would lead, and we haven't come to the end of this document, to an exaggerated and inaccurate document such as this being produced?
I don't know. I'm quite surprised to see this in April 2007, because the writing had been on the wall, for a long time before then, probably 15 months before then, that the unit's days were numbered and could have closed at any moment, with perhaps 10 days' notice. So I'm not sure, is the frank answer.
But are you shocked, unsurprised, given that the SDS, in your description, an elite unit, the focus of which was intelligence, and here is a document describing a deployment of a UCO that has been in the SDS for many years, exaggerated and inaccurate? Are you surprised or not so surprised by this stage?
No, I'm quite surprised. I mean, it's the days were numbered, quite frankly, at this stage, and I don't know. I can't offer any explanation. I apologise.
Just the next row is a reference to indie media. And again, just want an idea of accuracy of this document, but it also informs our understanding of the nature of your deployment after 2004. So for indie media, it says good solid access to this independent media outlet that is of such totemic importance to the UK autonomous movement. Is that accurate? Good solid access?
Well, anybody's got good solid access to indie media, really. It's a website, it's a bulletin board.
So for someone who has no familiarity with indie media at all, someone who is completely new to this area, reading that, they would not appreciate that not only do you have good solid access, but anyone with an internet connection would have the same.
Yeah, I mean, anybody's got access to the website. I certainly assisted, and you'll remember that my cover employment was about computer networking and that. I took up a load of Cat5 network cables up to Scotland with me. I did do something at the Forest Cafe, I can vaguely remember, but it wasn't much more than putting some switches and things in.
But on that precise point, you can see the next sentence, RW has assisted in the setting up of numerous intermedia hubs with regard to both IT systems, Glen Eagles above, the Forest Cafes, which you just referred to. So is that sentence, or that, if we just, I'll continue reading the rest of the sentence, and supply of alt-tech power, various eco-camps and festivals. So is that at least accurate, that you assisted setting up the IT systems, Forest Cafe, and the alt-tech power?
Yeah, I took some solar panels up with me when we went into the main camp at Stirling for the G8, and some cabling again. And I took up a load of, well, not a load, about 4, 25-metre extension cable sockets that somebody asked me to bring, and helped, I mean, for context, when these events are happening, there's often an indie media hub, but an indie media hub could just be an existing squatted space, or a cafe, or a tent in a field, quite frankly, with some solar panels and a generator outside. It's an area where people can return to and access the IT there to upload stories onto the Indomedia site, perhaps, or other websites, to process digital photography or video, do some editing.
Did you have a particular interest, or were you developing a particular interest in the media side of the groups that you were looking at?
Not particularly. I felt relatively comfortable with that, and it was, if you were asked to help out briefly, it was an area I felt quite comfortable with. Yes.
Could you help us with photographs during your deployment? What photographs? So we're familiar with, for example, the FIT team who take photographs. That is the focus. But what about you? You in the context of media, and you're just describing Indomedia and your connection there. But what photographs were you taking during this period?
During this phase, none. I don't think. I had when I was with Globalize, I had it was fairly early days of digital photography. So I had a camera I used to take, and I took pictures on demos and things, largely for the website to put up here. But I think by this stage, I never carried a camera, so I wasn't taking photographs myself at all.
And so, sorry to go back to the Globalize days. So, would this be correct? Just my understanding of your evidence that at demonstrations you would be there with a camera, but these were photographs. Your evidence is that would go on the Globalize Resistance website rather than going back to your managers and disseminated to C-School.
No, they'd go onto the website, and if they had captured people who were of interest, I would absolutely put them into the office as well.
All right. Going back to this document we have on screen, the last sentence says, and this is again about Indomedia, RW holds one of only about 20 permanent access all areas plastic passes for UK Indomedia. Is that sentence accurate?
No, it's not. I don't think there were any access all area plastic passes for UK. I did have a plastic laminated pass that just had Indomedia on it, which someone had possibly seen, but that was going all the way back to New York, I think, where you had to sort of check into the Indomedia hub that was set up there, and I kept it as wallet litter. Really, it was something quite useful to have in my wallet, but it was largely meaningless. It wasn't like an accredited press pass or something.
So in the collective statement that we looked at, what is set out there is it states there were no plastic access all areas passes, so which reflects what you've just said.
Yeah.
So
I'm not cited on. I would be very surprised if they had them.
Can you help us with, and appreciate what your evidence is that you weren't involved in the drafting of this document, but can you help us with how that sentence could appear in this SDS note, that you hold one of only, it's quite specific, you hold one of only about 20 permanent access all areas plastic passes for UK Indomedia? Because, I mean, we can overanalyze the sentence, but it's very specific about the number, the nature of the pass, the fact that it's plastic. Any idea how this could have ended up in this document at all?
None at all, I'm afraid.
All right, thank you. If we could just go to the next entry, please, on the schedules, as this refers to Earth First climate camp collectives. And I just again want to ask you the same question about the accuracy, and therefore just giving us an indication of your deployment at this time. So it says comprehensive to good access into these groups. Very many of the activists involved in these networks, and indeed the issue itself, are also active in the dissent network and others. Where this is the case, e.g. those groups based in Brighton, Bristol, Cardiff, Sheffield, Leeds, Cambridge, and to a lesser degree Edinburgh, access is excellent. Now, to what extent, if any, is that an accurate description of your access to Earth First and Climate Camp collectives?
Yeah, it's an exaggeration at best. I would have difficulty differentiating Earth First really from dissent. They often, there were communications out which came from both those groups. But
And to be fair to you, 118, in your statement, you say that you didn't infiltrate
No.
Earth First.
I mean, I didn't, but it's a lot of these groups are, spring up. The Venn diagram of overlap would be quite dense, but people wouldn't generally identify themselves as only, they wouldn't identify themselves as being a member of Earth First. I think it was a cause, it was an area of sort of activity that would be one of many areas that people would take part in.
And just from the perspective of geography,
Yep.
Brighton, Bristol, Cardiff, Sheffield, Leeds, Cambridge, Edinburgh, it would have been difficult physically for you to be regularly at all of those locations.
Yeah, no, definitely. I went to the Cowley Club, I don't know, gee whiz, 10 or 12 times, I would have thought, ever.
I'm just going to pause you there. I wonder if we can, because we can see there's a reference to the Cowley Club there. So you just mentioned that you had been there about 10 or so times. And so this document is not completely inaccurate. There are some details that are correct. Yes. Now, in relation to what's written about the Cowley Club, Brighton, RW is a well-known face at the Cowley Club and has good access to meetings held there. Now, you've explained how many times that you went there, about 10 times. Would you describe yourself there as a well-known face?
No.
All right, thank you. And if we just go, so very good access to a number of individuals nominally, and if we just go over the page, please. All right. Nominally resident in Brighton, such as Privacy and Privacy, good access to the Smash EDO campaign. Is that accurate in any way?
No.
No. All right. The Commonplace is the next group. The Commonplace Social Centres Leeds, comprehensive access to the centre itself, and many of the activists often found there, such as Privacy and Paul Chatterton. So may I ask you about your deployment, the second part of your deployment? To what extent, if any, did you have any interaction with the Commonplace Social Centre in Leeds?
I'm sure I went there once, maybe twice. I knew someone. I don't have any memory of Paul Chatterton, unless there's a picture I could see, perhaps. But
if this, I don't know whether this would assist, but in that statement, the collective statement that we were looking at before, there's a quote from Paul Chatterton who says, "I was involved in the Commonplace for several years, and I have no recollection of Wellings attending any meetings or events there." Would that be fair?
I think it would.
Yeah, all right. The reference then, if we can just go through the next entry, the Sumac Centre in Nottingham. In the second part of your deployment, to what extent did you have interaction or attend the Sumac Centre in Nottingham, please?
I certainly went there for at least one organising meeting. I remember it quite well because somebody who was very well known to me in my previous work with GR turned up late to a meeting that had already started. We were sat in a sort of horseshoe or a circle, and she walked in, and I thought this was going to be a very, very short meeting for me because she's bound to point at me and say, "This guy, we outed him and got rid of him as an informant." So I can remember, I've got quite a vivid memory of quietly beginning to sort of pack my bag up because I thought I was going to have to, I was going to be confronted at any moment. But I probably went there 2 or 3 times, I would say.
In the same part, it says, RW has good access to this open social space and community cafe, which is often used for national gatherings of various autonomous groups such as Dissent and assorted Hunt SAB groups. And then this, particularly good access into the vegan field kitchen group Veggies that often provides catering facilities inside the eco camps that spring up around summit venues. And so what we can see, it's very specific. It says that you had particularly good access to Veggies. Is that correct?
No, not at all. I did some very limited work with food up in Edinburgh later on, including getting some supplies into the camp, but so did dozens of other people.
If we just finish off the schedule, there's only 3 more entries just to have your response. And the Matilda Collective in Sheffield, although the Matilda is currently evicted from its squat close to the main railway station, various activists remain active in the area, primarily because of local studies. Access remains good. What's your analysis of what's set out in that row?
No, I don't remember going to Sheffield ever.
All right.
Trying to remember, there was a squat somewhere I visited up that way. It might have been called the Jam Factory. Was that Sheffield? But I don't remember going there.
All right, thank you. The next entry is Cardiff Anarchist Network South Wales. Excellent access into this strategically important grouping, including access to significant individuals such as, and we've ciphered them, PWE and VSP. Could you help us with your deployment? To what extent did it relate to the Cardiff Anarchist Network, please?
Not very much at all. I knew there were a couple of very well-known activists from Cardiff I had met socially and at meetings half a dozen times, perhaps. I suspect I know who those people are underneath the privacy boxes. But again, not that's an exaggeration, quite frankly. Again, I may not be particularly relevant, but there were a lot of meetings going on. And I think I hinted at this earlier, when I spoke about, I was trying to sort of make sure, could we deconflict across this? And again, word came back down that I could, that was an area that was already very well covered, and I could, there wasn't much point in expending any resource into it. The 2 people who I suspect are underneath those privacy boxes are both significant organisers, but...
Now, we can see that the next part of it is headed international, and I'm not going to ask you about any details of what you did outside of England, but I would like your broad comment on what is set out at the bottom of this page, please, because it refers to your international access, and it refers to a number of events, and it says these events have taken place in countries such as France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, the United States. Again, I'm not going to ask you about the details of what you did in those countries, but did you attend all of those countries during your deployment?
Yes.
If someone were to ask, what happens in France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands and the United States, what has that got to do with policing in England, particularly in London? What would your response to that be?
I suppose I would say that it's possible to organise overseas, for activity that was due to take place in London and the UK. The sort of summit-hopping nature of a lot of these protests meant that people, certainly from Europe, we knew that lots of people would travel from overseas to attend the G8 protests in Scotland, for sure.
Would it be unfair if someone were to make this criticism that at public expense you are paid to travel to these countries and it doesn't really assist at all in public order policing in London or England. It's not justified.
I would agree that I respectfully point out I was already being paid, so perhaps it didn't matter where I was at that time. But to get information from those countries or territories about the numbers and the sort of demeanour of people who are likely to come for the G8, albeit not in London, I obviously accept. I still think that would be useful. But I see your point.
In your own mind, did you consider it a perk of the job that you were doing at the time?
Well, to travel to these countries?
Yes.
No, I didn't. And I wasn't largely staying in hotels or, sightseeing. I would be working. So
I want to move away from that to what is set out. I wonder if we can move to page 7. So this is the last page of the document. And there's a reference to cyberspace. Okay? So this is not meant in any sort of flippant way. The internet is of vital importance when considering coverage of the autonomous left. 95% of the organising that took place against the Gleneagles G8 took place online. Now, pausing there, as we were talking about your increased use of the internet in relation to your work undercover, is that accurate? Would you align yourself with what's set out in that paragraph, particularly that 95% of the organising in relation to that event took place online? Is that accurate?
No, but it's difficult to know. Organising is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, isn't it? But a lot of communication, clearly. But you can talk and communicate online as much as you like. It's what actually is happening on the ground which is important.
The next paragraph, the emergence of voice over internet protocol telephony, VoIP. Now, just pausing there, a number of times during your evidence you've referred to your IT expertise. Were you familiar with VoIP at this time? So this is about 2007.
Not about the intricacies of how VoIP works, but certainly, communication online by voice. And I can remember quite a lot of excitement and, no, excitement's the wrong word, interest in Skype telephony when it first came out, coming down from the desk and others in trying to establish if people had that sort of technology at their disposal. And I can remember being asked about that on more than one occasion.
Being asked by your managers about that?
Yes, well, not specifically by my managers, but communication coming back down from the desk to try and establish.
So could this have come from you? The emergence of VoIP has also had a significant effect on communications between significant activists over the last 18 months or so. Is that something that could come from you?
I would have mentioned it, but then it was already being mentioned to me from...
RW has excellent access to a number of closed and moderated email lists that are host to literally hundreds of emails a day as the German G8 approaches. He also has author privileges on a number of significant websites and is a regular and recognised contributor to a number of sites that carry theoretical debate about the future of the movement. A number of points in that paragraph, but broadly, is that accurate or not?
No, it's not accurate at all.
Not accurate at all?
Well, I certainly had access to... I had access to at least a couple of email lists, I think, where you'd had to know someone to get approved to be... or someone had to vouch for you in some way. But, most people had access to any number of lists that were circulating.
What's the reference to author privileges? Do you know, does that mean anything to you?
No, it doesn't. I can speculate. I suppose it means that you were able to edit the content on that website, but I certainly didn't have any.
A recognised contributor to a number of sites that carry theoretical debate about the future of the movement?
No.
No. Now, we're going to move away from this document. Can you see at the end, at the bottom, if we zoom out, it says this is a live document and will be amended as access increases or decreases in specific areas, last updated the 25th of April 2007. Does that assist you in any way in identifying the provenance of this document?
No, it doesn't, I'm afraid.
Could we please take that down? I'm going to ask if we could please bring up on screen MPS 007 5739. So this is at your tab B132, which is in volume 3. I'm going to ask if we could... Yes. Now, I'm going to return in due course to these logs and how they came about. But for current purposes, firstly, do you recognise this document? Have you seen this before?
Yes, I think so.
Is this something that you produced?
Yes.
All right. So Ring Wraith events log, week commencing Monday the 13th of August 2007, all timings approximate. So what we see, I wonder if we can just go forward to page 3, please. So there, if we have a look, we can see, if we choose Friday the 17th of August, this is Friday the 17th of August 2007. So is this a snapshot of your deployment? This is, of course, coming to the end, but
yeah.
As far as you're concerned, it's a snapshot of your day as an SDS undercover officer, is that right?
Yes, pretty much. This is one of the things that came in with the new regime of management at the end of SDS. We had to account for every hour of every day, 7 days a week.
When you started, you were phoning the office how many times a day?
A phone call in the morning, a phone call in the afternoon, AM, PM.
A meeting twice a week?
Yes.
But by this stage, things had changed, yes?
Yes, oh, very much so.
All right. Now we can see work today, so 7:45 in the morning, online, check various websites and bulletin boards associated with Autonomous Left, check email on various e-lists, some open and some closed, moderated. Now just pausing there, when you say some closed, what does that mean, please?
I think it just means that it was some of the lists that you were on, you had to be sort of approved or accessed. There were lists, there were lots and lots of e-lists, email groups in existence, and some of them you only got not invited to join, but someone would say, oh, here, on this bit of paper, make sure you sign up to this and we'll get you involved.
Would it be unfair to say this, that although described as closed groups, quite easy to access them?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, sometimes. Sometimes if you went into an organising space, a convergence centre or something like that, or, there would be something up on the wall with little tear-off bits at the bottom and you could pull one off.
Well, you were describing yesterday the first half of your deployment and how it got to you in terms of living a lie and lying to all sorts of people. But by this stage, as you just described, to get into a closed group, sometimes it might just mean just pulling off part of, it's like these pieces of paper with the contact details repeated, and you just tear that off. So a very different type of deployment to compare to the globalised resistance.
It was different, absolutely, and I think by necessity you couldn't focus on one little group or geographical area. And in fact, I remember having or requesting a meeting about the sort of deconfliction side, and also to try and explore whether it would be possible that some of this type of work could be conducted, if there was such a thing back then, by an online undercover officer who never showed their face, if that makes sense. Whether there was some, whether it could be done by a department, in a police building, where they could just open source it and have good access to the stuff that was flying around and sign up. I was aware that there were undercover officers working online in different types of crime, and I was just hoping to explore whether that existed in this context as well.
All right. You just finish this entry here. So answer mails, contribute to various threads on message boards. Could you just give us a picture of a message board? What sort of comments would be on there? Access? Is this just, for example, you could have a newspaper article and people put all sorts of comments on the bottom? Is it similar to that?
It's that sort of thing, yes. Well, and also sometimes you could add clarity or useful information, or if somebody needed some resource or other, you could say, I can do that, or, vice versa.
And extract information for use in intelligence reports. I don't mean this as a criticism or belittling in this way, but if someone were to say, well, what you were doing is you were going online to publicly available information and you were copy-pasting them into Intel reports and sending them to your managers, would that be an unfair description?
No, I mean, there was a lot of that going on, and I think by necessity there was so much information flying around, and also it sounds very basic, doesn't it? But there was there was no understanding about where to go, I think, in sort of upstairs or, back at the desk, about which sites to monitor, which were serious, which weren't. And also, I was constantly being asked to provide context on what things meant, if that makes sense. What does this actually mean? And is this serious?
Were you in a situation where your managers had very little expertise or knowledge on the internet, and so it is very easy for you to be in a position where you can provide information, although publicly available, because your managers perhaps were more traditional in the documents that they access, that it was very easy to impress them or to.
No, I don't think that's the case. I think they could copy paste themselves, but it was what I was able to do, and quite often did, was to provide context about that information, and sort of this means that, and that was something that happened very frequently on the run up to, certainly to the Glen Eagles G8, and in fact we went up to meet senior officers. I went up, I think 2 or 3 times in the end. Meetings were sought from us to try and get a handle on the feel and look and the shape of the policing presence to the G8, where the activist scene was about to establish.
I asked you yesterday about a number of times feedback from managers, and your response was that it was always positive about your reporting. It was always positive. But did you ever receive any feedback in relation to the latter part of your deployment, along the lines of, well, all of this material is available online. Why are you sending us this? Why are you not getting more involved in the groups of that nature? Did that? No?
No, right. Not at all. And I think there was an acceptance that it would have been that actually trying to keep a lighter touch on 6 or 7 areas throughout the UK, in the context of the G8, was actually quite a sensible way to do it. And also for context, at this time, when going into, you never knew from one week to another whether the unit was going to exist at the end of the week. They blew constantly hot and cold. One week you'd go in and it was great, well, this is going to happen. The next week you went in and it was sort of be prepared to pull stakes at any moment. We could be shut in 10 days' time, so light touch, back off a bit.
Sorry, who could be closed in 10 days' time?
The SDS.
And who said that?
It was coming from the new management regime, really. I'm talking, forgive me, I'm not confident of the date, but when Mike Dell left, other people came in to manage, and from that moment on, it was completely obvious. The writing was on the wall that the SDS was going to be wound up. It was just a question of when, not if.
But DCI Mike Dell left about September 2005, does that...
if you'd asked me point blank, I would have put it.
So not right
early 206,
not right at the end, not December 2007, January 2008.
No.
We'll come to the closure of the SDS, but your evidence is that by the last period of DCI Dell being in charge, the writing was already on the wall as far as the SDS
No,
is
forgive me.
concerned?
Not when Mike was still there, but
No.
almost immediately after. Forgive me, I can't remember if I can say his name. I'll look at it quickly.
The DCI Julian McKinney that was referred to yesterday, is that
Yes, him and HN 275.
Frankie Flood? So
Yes.
in that
Frankie came in to replace Mike. That's my memory, but no, Julian did originally, didn't he? And then he was promoted superintendent, and Frankie came in.
All right.
But yes.
We will explore that period towards the end of your evidence. May I just go back to this document
Yes.
here? Because afterwards it says the next entry, 11:30, it says to Duff, which is to your Duff
Yeah.
accommodation.
Yes.
So where were you from 7:45 to 11:30? Where would you have been? At home or?
Yeah, I'd have been working from my desk at home.
Was that a significant change as well in this post-globalised resistance period of your deployment, that you could spend more time at home because all you needed was an internet connection to do a lot of?
Some of the time, yes.
Okay, all right.
Other times, I was on, moving around the UK and attending other meetings and stuff. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and it says to Duff, and then an hour later to Camp for Climate Action. And then it says arrive. Could you just help us with the timings there? Just because this is a snapshot of Friday the 17th of August 2007, it allows us to see what you were doing. So could you just talk us through sort of 11:30 to 1400 hours, that sort of period there?
Forgive me, the Camp for Climate Action was the Heathrow camp, which... Yeah, so I would have gone to my Duff first. You'd never travel somewhere direct, if that makes sense. And then clearly I made my way to Heathrow and arrived at about 2 o'clock.
All right.
If it helps at all, I was very, by this stage, forgive me, this is 2007, isn't it?
It is.
Sorry.
Yes, it is. August 2007, so it's right at the end of your deployment.
It was, literally the days were numbered by this stage, and I was very, very keen not to attend the Camp for Climate Action because I was meant to be halfway through my withdrawal phase. But, the word came down from on high that it had to be covered, and I was pretty much ordered to go. I was quite reluctant, quite frankly, but...
Okay. I wonder if you can take that down. So I want to move from and we can take the whole document down, your research online to another topic. And I wonder if we could please bring up 0526807, which is in volume 3. Now, this is a collection of authorizations for your deployments. And I just want to have a look at, this is at tab B86 in volume 3. I wonder if we can go to page 9 in this document, please. So this is an authorization. This was an authorization from Mike Dell. The date of it's the 1st of September 2005. And I just want to, again, in terms of these sorts of authorizations, you mentioned yesterday that the management, the office, tried to protect you from the bureaucracy of the police, and that maybe you might have glanced at a document or signed an authorization. But this page in the authorization, is that something that you remember seeing at the time, or difficult to remember?
No, I don't think I would have seen this at all.
Now, again, in terms of what is set out here, so since the last updates, Ringwraith's conduct and use on the 7th of June 05, the following intelligence has been gathered, produced 137 intelligence reports, and then I just want to go through in terms of the summary of the reporting that's sent out. It says the high volume of reporting during this period reflects the intense activity by and involvement in the build-up and execution of activity by UCO Ringwraith in relation to G8 protests in Scotland. Briefings continue to be provided to desk officers, the NPOIU and Tayside Police, particularly with reference to the anarchist elements intent on causing violence during the summit. Now, in relation to G8, it's the first bullet point. Is it right that took up a significant amount of your focus, your time, after you moved from globalised resistance?
Yes.
I want to ask you about the briefings that are referred to, and I would like you to be very specific in relation to these, because I'm only going to be asking you about briefings that took place in England, in this country.
Yes.
What briefings did you provide in this country about the forthcoming G8?
Well, I certainly spoke to desk officers a lot about the G8 activity. I have never briefed the NPOIU or indeed knowingly met with any of their management. Forgive me, I definitely briefed officers from Tayside at quite a senior level, and I don't know whether we met them in England. I'm not being mealy-mouthed. I have a recollection of...
If I can ask it in this way, can you give us any evidence of anything to do with them that took place in this country?
No.
No, all right. Can we move to the second bullet point? The quality and quantity of both the strategic and tactical intelligence provided by Ringwraith has been subject to high praise by Tayside Police and was a crucial factor in the successful policing of the anti-summit demonstrations. Did you ever receive feedback from what's referred to as customers generally during your deployment?
No, hardly ever.
All right. So the feedback that you received, if any, was from your managers about your reporting?
Yes. I do remember that Tayside Police had sent a letter or something back, I think, but I never saw it personally.
You never saw it?
No.
All right. Moving to the next bullet point, UCO Ringwraith was able at an early stage to provide potential positive investigative lead into a security compromise, G8. Reporting of the planning by the dissent network included targeting, travel plans, convergence centre venues, leading activists and their mobile numbers, tactics, targets and true intentions. Does that summarise your general reporting on the dissent network during the second half of your deployment?
Yes.
And then this, at the last bullet point, says the reaction of activists to the police shooting in Stockwell following the London suicide bombings has been and will continue to be closely monitored by UCO Ringwraith. Could you just help us with that? What that summary of your reporting, the reaction of the activists?
Well, I remember being sort of asked or briefed just to keep an eye out for any organising that may be going on as a result of the tragic, actions at Stockwell, and to keep an eye on it, just to sort of inform the policing response. I can remember in particular the fact that there were going to be some, this is later, the fact that there were going to be some sort of memorials or a meeting on the 6-month anniversary or a year. I might be conflating this with something else. But it was just, there was a lot of sensitivity around it, and wanted to make sure that the policing response was, appropriate and was respectful and wasn't sort of over the top, if that makes sense.
Those are your words. Be respectful, ensure that the policing wasn't over the top. But were they the words of the managers that were briefing you of what they were interested in, what they wanted? How can you remember? And of course, I'm asking you about something that was asked many years ago. But could you help us with the way this was communicated to you? What did they say, and who said it about keeping an eye on?
It was no more than a watching brief. It was, if anything comes across, sort of, if you come across any activity or whatever that's likely to be, connected with this, we just want to make sure that it's, done appropriately.
Those words, watching brief, could they have been the words used or difficult to
possibly,
say?
yes.
But it may assist if we turn over the page, please. If we, I wonder if we can expand the third paragraph. Thank you. UCO Ringwraith's position within the two organisations will afford an opportunity to gauge and assess any attempt to subvert or hijack the nascent campaign for justice for John Charles de Menezes, the Brazilian man shot dead at Stockwell on the 22nd of July 2005. I'm going to ask if we can just expand out, because it refers to two organisations, just so that we're clear what's referred to here, please. We can just zoom out again. And so in relation to the two organisations that are referred to here, we can see at the top there's a reference to globalised resistance and also dissent. Was that the two organisations that are being referred to here? Could you just assist us with that? So it says UCO Ringwraith's position within the two organisations. Do you know what those two organisations were, looking at that, please?
I don't know. No, I'm not sure. I mean, clearly Dissent and GR are named there, but I didn't have access into GR at that stage at all.
All right. I wonder if we can go back and just zoom in again on that third paragraph, please. Thank you. So, Ringwraith's position within two organisations will afford an opportunity to gauge and assess any attempt to subvert or hijack the nascent campaign for justice for Jean Charles de Menezes. So, do you recall that as one of your briefs to gauge and assess attempts to subvert or to hijack justice for Jean campaigns?
No, not at all.
No.
I think the likelihood of any attempt to subvert or hijack those campaigns is highly unlikely.
In this same document, I wonder if you can go to page 17, please. So on page 17, it's the last paragraph. And we have another mention of dissent. While dissent's future evolves, UCO Ringwraith's access to the activist and extreme left-wing scene also ensures coverage on a number of associated groups and issues, including currently the ongoing reaction to the recent terrorist attacks, and more particularly for the MPS, the accidental shooting of Jean Charles de Menezes. So in terms of, again, this description here, whilst dissent's future evolving, your access ensuring coverage of a number of associated groups, including the ongoing reaction, is that an accurate description?
No, it's not.
What extent of your time and effort was spent during your deployment on anything connected to the shooting of Jean Charles de Menezes?
None whatsoever. Okay. I'd be surprised if I ever put a report in on it, quite frankly. You may know different. I have a vague memory of perhaps putting in something when I saw reference to a vigil which was due to take place outside of the tube station, perhaps on the anniversary of Mr. Menezes' death.
I wonder if we can pause there, because staying on that topic, I wonder if we can take this document down, please, and move to its MPS 0064789. So this is your tab C440, which is in volume 8. So this is, again, we're familiar with the format of this. This is the raw reporting, so this isn't one of the processed reports.
Yeah.
We can see a number of reports here, but it's the first one. I wonder if we can just focus on that, please. So Ring, obviously a reference to Ring Wraith, your undercover identity. Intelligence, 6-month commemoration of the death of Jean-Charles de Menezes. Activists will mark this, the 6-month anniversary of the death of Jean-Charles de Menezes with a short commemoration service at Stockwell Tube Station at 1 p.m. on Sunday, the 22nd of January. Flowers will be laid at the scene and speeches given. The event has been co-organised by the Justice for Jean campaign. The group maintain a website that can be found, and then we can see the justiceforjean.com website. Was this reflective of the request that you had received to keep a watching brief? This
Yes.
report. Is that the reason that you submitted this report?
Yes, but also, it's, you know, I have personal experience of reporting, you know, somebody dialing 999 once for a vigil that was going on, not at this, but outside a police station, where you get a 999 call coming in saying there are a bunch of people congregating on the pavement outside a police station and they're setting fires. And what they actually mean is they're lighting lanterns and candles as part of the vigil. So at that, what you could then do occasionally, if you knew that was going to be happening on a basis, you could get a marker put on the police system so that as people would die, you know, if you're a 999 operator, you would get a marker come up saying, look, this is probably a candlelight vigil that we know is going on, just so that you didn't send 3 or 4 police cars down there with blue lights and two-tones going, when in fact it's some people trying to light a candle in a jam jar.
In relation to what is set out in this report, were you there?
No.
Was this information in this report all from the justiceforjean.com website?
I don't know, I don't remember.
If not from there, where else would you have obtained this information from?
It could have been just up on Indymedia. It might have been a footnote in another organising email. Sometimes people would put like a little bulletin board or just like a news group about things that were going on. I'd imagine it was from something like that.
If someone were to make an observation along these lines, I want your reaction to the fairness of such an observation, that police shot and killed Jean-Charles de Menezes, and at the 6-month anniversary of the death, there's a report about that commemoration service in an undercover police officer's report being inappropriate. Can you see some justification in that criticism?
I think that there was certainly a request for information about these things coming down from the desk, but I don't really think never any suggestion that you'd look to infiltrate a group like this. That was never ever on the cards, and in fact I felt that the request for information was much more light touch, watching brief. We don't want anything to be heavy-handed or disrespectful or any policing response to something going on the street, a commemoration, a memorial. There was a huge amount of sensitivity about what had happened in the Met generally.
Was that as a result of the undercover policing around the Stephen Lawrence inquiry? Did that?
I don't know. I'm not sure what was in their minds.
Was that ever mentioned to you, the policing in relation to Stephen Lawrence inquiry?
In the context of this?
Or this or anything?
I don't think so. I mean, it was always a sort of subtext running through people's minds, but no, I don't recall that.
No. I would like us to take this document down. Could you please move to another of your intelligence reports? It's MPS 0068851, please. So this is in your tab for C420, which is in volume 8. I wonder if we could go to page 4 of this document. So this is again your raw reporting, which contains a number of individual items. And we've got this report at the end on page 4. So Intelligence Cambridge Action Network continue to plan attack on Metropolitan Police website. Privacy is an autonomous activist centrally involved with the Dissent Network. He is based mainly in Cambridge, where he holds a professorship. In Cambridge, he is one of the key activists in a group called the Cambridge Action Network. Activists in that group continue to plan an attack on the Metropolitan Police's website. This hijacking of the site would apparently involve seizing control of the various web pages and replacing text and images on the site's front page and other pages that can be reached from links that are already in existence. The nature of the attack is believed to be a cross-site scripting or XSS attack. The intention will be to post a raft of material that will form part of an attempt to further undermine the position of the Commissioner and will include text and images with regard to the shooting of Jean-Charles de Menezes. And just pausing there, could you just assist us with where you obtained this intelligence from?
I don't have a clear memory of it. It would have been with conversation, I would imagine, with the individual named at the top there.
And this, the target of this action is the police's own website. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I remember that it was literally the Met Police's outward-facing public website.
All right. Could we please take that document down and move to MPS 0076107? So this is at your tab C509, which is in volume 9. It's a report, or we've put, and the inquiry put a date of the 17th of September 2007 on this document. Now, we can see the first page. If we look at the first page of this, could you just help us with the format? Because this is reflective of your reporting in this period. So we're looking before at raw reporting, the processed reports, but we see increasingly references to email addresses, website addresses. Could you just help us with, we can see different fonts on this document. Could you help us with what this document is? Is this something that you produced? And how did you produce it? Quite
Possibly, but it looks like it's literally information that's flying around and been cut and pasted in.
And would that be standard for you to do by this stage? You talked about providing context.
Yeah.
You would cut and paste from the various parts of the website, you do the research, and then you would forward that on to your managers. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right.
When would this be? Is this 2007?
Well, we've dated it 17th of September 2007.
Yeah, I mean, this was literally at the end. And for context, I was spending more time being full-time in meetings about the winding up of SDS, really. Probably at least 2 or 3 days a week were spent in the office as part of that wind-up process.
Could we go, please, to page 12 of this document? So it's quite a lengthy document in terms of reports because of the nature of it here. And so, and I wonder if we can show page 13 as well. I'm just going to ask in relation to this. So we can see there is Jean-Charles de Menezes' public meeting, Monday, 23rd of July, London. And then just looking at what's under that, it says the war on terror is a lie. Then we've got a date, 19th of July, 2007, and the time, and then the reference here. I wonder if we can just zoom out again, just see the documents side by side. So may I just ask who the customers were for this type of material? So what we can see here. So we can see, for example, it talks about speakers, members of Jean's family, and the names there. But why were you providing this sort of information to your managers? But again, different from the type of reporting that you were doing earlier on.
I mean, purely for information for the desk, just so they were aware of the meeting.
To what extent did you discuss the Jean-Charles de Menezes campaign with your managers? What recollection do you have of that?
I don't think I discussed it with them at all. I don't recall any discussions or conversations about it. As I said, it was a light touch, watching brief. If anything crosses your desk almost, can you just make sure it's included, just so we're aware of what's going on?
Before we can take that document down, thank you. Before we have our mid-morning break, I want to ask you about just a discrete topic. And this has been referred to by a number of individuals that they experience, for example, burglaries happening and suspicious burglaries where, in fact, items of value were not taken, but maybe computers were taken and data was taken. To what extent were you ever asked to provide details that would assist, say, a fake burglary, so it's providing the details of what the layout of a particular location looked like, so someone else could then go in and say, steal a laptop or a paper file? Did that feature at all in your deployment?
No, it didn't. I was never asked to provide information with regards to a burglary or a theft. I was asked quite specifically details about the globalised office in the old Truman Brewery in Brick Lane and about the security on that office.
And so in relation to, well, maybe help if we just turn up a report. If we could go, please, to MPS 004-3182. Which is in volume 7, tab C302. Okay. Sorry, it's 004-3182. So you've already described, for example, you were asked to take photographs of the Globalised Resistance Office, and in this report here, in the last paragraph, there's a reference to details about padlock. And again, in terms of that information, to what extent were you specifically asked to do that?
I I don't remember specifically. I know that they were interested in the security of the office.
All right.
And I would imagine, I mean, you spoke earlier about potential, I've no idea whether there was ever an entry made, but it wouldn't, it'd only have been a burglary, of course, if that entry was unlawful. And that was not the sort of activity, that was a serious thing if that was ever on the cards, and
So
would only ever be
that's
done with lawful authority.
no part of what you were involved in.
No, not at all. But when I was asked to report on that, I suppose my immediate thought was, well, why would you need to know that? And I can only imagine it would be in connection with something like that.
All right. And if we can just, again, before the break, just go to one more document and then we'll break for the morning. And the next document is 00, and it is 429. This is at tab C233, volume 6. So it's 00429. And it's, if we can go to page 4 of this document. So in conversation on Saturday, 21st of June, Privacy of the Stop the War Coalition reported that the coalition section of the offices had been burgled in the last 3 days or so. Despite some fairly desirable flat screen displays, the only items taken were all the computer hard drives. Not surprisingly, this has led to the conclusion that the state was responsible for the burglary. John Rees is reportedly furious, and doubly so, as it seems that much of the valuable data, such as membership lists and the like, was not backed up properly. This will be a significant blow to the effectiveness of the coalition. It also raises other questions with regard to security, as the office workers for the coalition were recently provided with an encryption package provided by an activist in the United States, but failed to install it in time to lessen this incident's impact. Now, yesterday, when we were looking at your compromise, one of the documents we looked at was potentially suggesting disrupting as a possibility globalized resistance, and your evidence was that you wouldn't be able to do that, or you had no knowledge of that. But in terms of this incident, the burglary that is reported, if it was suggested that, or asked whether that was anything to do with an attempt to disrupt Stop the War Coalition, what would your response be to that? Could you help us with that?
I think that is highly unlikely. I have no knowledge of that at all. I remember this conversation relatively clearly with the person whose name we were in central London doing something. We got chatting. I literally stood on the street over a coffee, and she told me about what had happened.
Was any part of your deployment involved in disrupting any of the groups that you spied on, disrupting their effectiveness?
No, not at all.
No. All right. So I don't know whether that is now a convenient moment for the mid-morning break.
Certainly. We'll have the usual 15-minute break now.
HN 118, I'm going to ask you about Patrick McCurdy. Is that a name that you recall?
Yes.
Could you help us with what connection you had with Patrick McCurdy during your deployments?
Yes, I met him. I'm sure we met at a squatted space or a convergent space in Glasgow ahead of the Gleneagles G8. In fact, I've got a recollection of waking up. We slept on a open space, wooden floor, where activists who were attending the meeting were able to sleep. I had gone to sleep, and when I woke up, he was literally 2 feet away from me in his sleeping bag, sort of parallel to where I was, and we met that morning.
In the second half of your deployment, and by that I mean after you left Globalised Resistance, was Patrick McCurdy one of those that you became closest to, or not?
Yes.
And in general terms, so a lot of my questions yesterday related to Guy Taylor. How close were you to Patrick McCurdy compared to how close you were to Guy Taylor, for a comparison?
Not as close, nowhere near.
Is this because in the second part of your deployment, you were less involved centrally in the various organisations that you were spying upon?
Yes, I think that's fair.
In the second half of your deployment, would you agree that Patrick McCurdy, there was no one that you were closer to than him during that second phase, or that he represented as close as you got to anyone?
Yes, that's probably accurate.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about a document. I wonder if we can put up on screen. It's UCPI 39735, which is at tab B150, which is in volume 4, of your bundle. I'm just going to bring this up on screen. So we can see here an article, part of the Undercover Research portal. Is this something that you've seen before?
It's not, no.
There is reference in this section to, it's headed Simon Wellings McCurdy Interviews. Do you remember that Patrick McCurdy did a PhD research project? Does that something that you recall from your deployment?
Yes.
What was your involvement in that PhD?
I'd forgotten about it until literally seeing this, but I have a recollection that he interviewed me as part of that work.
Would it be right that he interviewed you on more than one occasion for his PhD?
I don't recall that, but it's possible. I wouldn't dispute it if he says that's the case.
Can you remember why he interviewed you for his PhD?
I think his work was, from memory, he was involved, I wouldn't pretend to know the outline of his thesis completely, but I know he was interested in the sort of tension that he thought existed between mainstream media coverage and sort of independent media coverage around Showpiece Summit demonstrations and protests.
Were your managers aware that you participated in interviews for Patrick McCurdy's PhD whilst you were deployed as an undercover officer?
I genuinely can't remember. I would have thought it would be something that I would have spoken to them about, but I can't remember.
Did participating in those interviews have anything to do with your work as a UCO in any way?
No, apart from maintaining my cover, no, not at all.
I'd like to ask you, because in this online article there are a number of references to your interaction with Mr. Kurdi, and I just want to ask you some questions about them. You can see that in the second paragraph on the first page, saying that you were redeployed in 2005 into the Dissent Network, predominantly anarchist mobilisation against the G8 summits, which in 2005 has taken place at Gleneagles, Scotland. So we can agree that is correct. He then said, when Newsnight released the photo of Wellings in March 2011, researcher Patrick McCurdy, active with Dissent media team called the Counter Spin Collective for the 2005 G8 mobilisation, realised that he had known the undercover corresponding with him into 2006. Is that right, that you corresponded with him into 2006 as a time period? Is that right?
I would have thought we were still communicating in 2006. Yes, I know Patrick quite well, so yeah.
So he says that further, Wellings participated in McCurdy's PhD research project, in which he was twice interviewed, principally on his assumed activist persona's attitude to the media, but also about his past activities whilst he was with Globalise Resistance. Is that right, that you were discussing the media in relation to Dissent and previously in relation to Globalise Resistance?
Yes, I think so.
Did you have any concerns at the time communicating with Mr. McCurdy about your experience in Globalise Resistance and Dissent, knowing that he was producing a PhD?
No, not particularly that I recall.
I wonder if we can turn over the page, please. Page 2, there's a heading on page 2, McCurdy and Wellings Contact 2004 to 2006. Can you see it says McCurdy was in contact? It's in the middle of the page. I wonder if we can blow up the middle of the page, please. So if we expand the middle section, it says McCurdy was in contact with Wellings between 2004 and 2006, though latterly only through email correspondence. So again, is that a fair reflection of the contact between the two of you?
No, I think we spent quite a lot of time in each other's company physically, so that's not strictly accurate, I don't think.
And what was the nature of that contact? It was more being physically in his presence as opposed to just by emails?
No, in his presence too, on occasion. We kept in touch quite frequently. I remember we got involved with we did some work in Edinburgh. I say work, I don't want to over-egg it. We got involved in distributing some sort of camp kitchen vegan food around various convergence spaces and places where people were meeting up before the actual protest got going properly, with a camp kitchen that was attached to a mosque up there. And then we did something around that, I believe, when we got back to South London. But I knew wasn't anywhere near as close to Patrick as I had been to leading people in Globalise, but we saw each other quite a lot. He was looking to make contacts with various groups about communication and the media, which we did.
What was the policing purpose of your contact with Mr. McCurdy? Was it more for your cover or in terms of obtaining any intelligence?
It was more for my cover. There was the occasional bit that came out from an intelligence perspective, as I recall, but it was mainly for cover.
Because would you agree with this, that in fact the information flow was rather than from him to you, was you to him, because he was, for example, interviewing you for the PhD?
Yes, I mean, with regard to that specific thing.
All right. And just specific in terms of timing, it said that he first encountered you at the European Social Forum in London between the 15th and 17th of November 2004. So this is right after the time that you were expelled from Globalised Resistance, yes?
Yes.
McCurdy was studying for his PhD at the London School of Economics and had previously been involved in the 2002 counter-GH mobilisation in Canada. So was he the person that you sort of took hold of after you left Globalised Resistance in relation to making your move into the dissent network and moving away from Globalised Resistance? Was he someone that you turned to as a new target?
Yes, I wouldn't describe him, solely in the purpose of a target, but certainly was someone who was, when I met him and we got to know each other a little bit, he was certainly plugged into so many layers and different groups of activity that were going to be centrally involved in the effort to protest the G8, that he was an obvious person to, keep in touch with.
Now, if we could turn over the page, please. On page 3, so he says, according to McCurdy, Wellings told him his job was to install fibre optic cables, work which took him across the world. So is that the... Just so that we have an understanding, we have a perspective here from Mr. McCurdy in relation to your legend, but is that the legend that you continued with in the latter part of your deployment?
Yes.
All right. Here it says, at the time of the interviews in 2005, he claimed, and then quoting from the interviews, I've been involved in political activism on and off now for about 10 years. Current wave of involvement started just after Genoa in 2001. Genoa was an amazing seminal moment in the movement, and I missed it. I spent the whole weekend glued to my mate's laptop on indie media with a really slow, shaky dial-up connection that kept dropping out and watching it on some of the mainstream news reports. I kept thinking I should have gone, but that kind of piqued my interest again. I started going to some stuff, meetings and bits and bobs. So does that jog your memory in relation to the types of things that you were saying to Mr. McCurdy?
Yes, it does.
Would it be fair to say that is an insight into how you were presenting during your deployment in terms of your persona?
Yes, probably.
All right. Now, if we just drop down to a couple of paragraphs, it says, having become active again, he claimed to have been part of an affinity group. We're kind of relatively tight little, I suppose you would call us an affinity group. We do sort of fairly direct action type stuff, mixed with, just building and helping out where we can on other big mobilisations and stuff. And again, is that the way in which you presented, that you were involved in those doing, quote, fairly direct action type stuff?
To Patrick?
Yes.
Yes.
But did you have any involvement in fairly direct action type stuff?
Whatever in my deployment, or?
Yes.
I suppose it's how you interpret direct action, but yes, every now and again. It is post Gleneagles G8, or yes.
Well, could you give us an example of, because here you are presenting to McCurdy at the time. Well, you say you're someone who we do sort of fairly direct action type of stuff, okay? And firstly, in terms of what you yourself did, what did you do during your deployment yourself that could be classified as direct action?
Well, certainly in take the Gleneagles G8 first, I was involved in, a number of the sort of attempts to go out and do the blockades, going out certainly from the Stirling camp for the main day of action to take part in the attempt to we thought it was going to be to break out the camp, but we just walked out the main door or the main gate.
If in giving examples, I'm going to ask if you could restrict yourself to England. In England, during your deployment, from the day you started to the end, as far as you were concerned yourself, what is the high point of any direct action that you were personally involved in?
In England?
Yes.
Probably no more than sit-down protests or bridge blocks, that type of stuff.
Now, a sit-down protest, would you agree that sit-down protests can be limited in time? That it can just be for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or so? It can be a brief...
It can be, yes.
And is it also the case that, and did you experience this when you were involved in sit-downs, that it can also be done with notifying the police at the time, say, look, we're going to do a sit down here, we're going to be there for a minute or two, and then we're going to move on. Is that your experience?
I suppose you could. I've never experienced one where the aim was to take it for 1 or 2 minutes, but yes, yeah, it could be.
When we heard evidence last week from, for example, Guy Taylor, it was made clear that globalised resistance was not involved in any violent direct action. But would you agree with that in terms of the entirety, in fact, of your deployments, that anything direct action related, firstly, it would not come under the category of violent direct action?
In England?
Yes.
Yes.
And in terms of other direct action, the high point is sit-down protests?
Yes, probably. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, all right. I wonder if we can just move further, just in this article, just a few other parts of it I want to ask you about, please. If we turn to page 5, now, I have been asking you about how you became involved in the Dissent Network, but this is a topic that you at the time were also discussing with Patrick McCurdy. Is that right? Because we can see it says here in the article, it says taking part in dissent, on being asked on how he got involved in the Dissent Network, Wellings said. So is that right, that Mr. McCurdy was asking you about that sort of thing at this time?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And this, our understanding is this is a quote from what you said to him. Everybody kind of knew the G8 was coming here and stuff, and I kind of really completely cut my ties and links with the other groups. Having been involved on this, I don't know how you would call it, this sort of side of the movement before, I was just very keen to get back involved. I really didn't do anything much more sophisticated than speak to a couple of people, have a look round. It was obvious that dissent was very energetic, and it seemed quite sorted and started quite early, so I was quite keen to get involved in that. So that's how, really. So when it says there, I really didn't do anything much more sophisticated than to speak to a couple of people and have a look round. In fact, is that accurate in terms of what you actually did?
About how I got involved?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And then it says, but I signed up to a few of the e-lists. Now this, again, is that true? What you're obviously presenting to Mr. McCurdy at the time in your undercover persona as Simon Wellings, but is what you're describing here accurate in the sense that you're telling him at the time that you signed up to a few of the e-lists?
I would have signed up to the e-lists, yes.
Okay. And spoke to some people, and the guys and girls in our group are happy with the politics and the way it's organised. We are certainly not interested sort of hierarchical leadership. And again, is this you accurately describing the people that you're interacting with, the activists you're interacting with, as opposed to putting on or giving a story?
Yes, I think so.
I haven't got a particular beef with that, it's just not for us, and that's how really I've been along to some of the meetings, some of the London meetings. Beyond ESF, Trapeze, you just start going to some of the gatherings and you get a little bit more involved. I've also been able to help move stuff about. And again, is that, in fact, an accurate description of what you were doing at the time, that you were getting, your words, a little bit more involved and helping move stuff about? Is that, in fact, accurate description of the level of your involvement at the time?
Yeah, at the beginning, absolutely.
Okay. I wonder if we can turn over the page in the report to page 6, and it's, in fact, just below halfway down, on policing of protests and associated media attention. Policing of protests is a topic Wellings speaks to on multiple occasions in his interviews with Mr. McCurdy. Is that correct?
Yes, probably.
Why were you, as an undercover SDS officer, speaking to Mr. McCurdy about the policing of protests?
I think it's just naturally a thing that would come up in conversation. It was something that he was equally interested in himself.
these conversations were recorded.
I don't remember.
Did he not say, well, I'm going to... did he explain he was doing a PhD? You knew he was doing a PhD and these interviews were for his PhD?
Yeah, I do. I think he had a... Yeah, I think he did. He had a compact disc player or something like that, I remember.
So he has a compact disc player. Did he say that you would be quoted in his PhD, or the whole purpose of interviewing you was so he could use this material in the PhD? Did that topic arise?
I don't remember, but yeah, quite possibly.
But looking back on it, do you not consider it unusual that an SDS undercover officer was participating in interviews, giving information to an activist, and particularly on the topic of policing of protests?
I suppose it is quite unusual. I don't think I was giving him information, but we were certainly seems that the police tactics had come up in the course of that conversation. I don't dispute that.
So policing of protest is a topic Wellings speaks to on multiple occasions in his interviews with McCurdy. In relation to various protests around the G8 summit in the UK, he notes, and this appears to be a quote from you, "I also think that there is a lot of tactics being used by the state to intimidate people. You get the use of these police camera teams, the forward intelligence team, everywhere you go." Now, is that accurate? Did you remember saying words to that effect? Would you agree that that is a quote from Mr. McCurdy's interview of you for his PhD?
I don't remember it at all, but quite possibly.
Now, the words there, in your undercover role, are they reflecting your personal views? Are they reflecting the views of the persona of Simon Wellings, or a cross between the two? Can you just help us with that? So in terms of this view, I also think, this are your words, I also think that there's a lot of tactics being used by the state to intimidate people. You get the use of these police camera teams, the forward intelligence team, everywhere you go. Was that something that you were putting on a fake persona of Simon Wellings? Well, this is the sort of thing an activist would say. Or was it, in fact, your genuine...
No, it was much more something that I thought Wellings would feel and say.
Goes on, he particularly comments at the over-policing for a protest called at a meeting of G8 environmental and development ministers on the 17th of March 2005 in Derbyshire, and which had seen a low turnout of demonstrators. And then it appears again a quote from you, "I went to Derby for the G8 environment ministers meeting, and I swear I'd never seen anything like it. I don't think anybody, expected it to be a huge," and I wonder if we can go over the page, "demonstration. There was a critical mass called at the railway station. I was in a fucking car looking at like a dreadful activist arriving in a 4-seat car on my own. Anyway, I parked up, walked around to the railway station, and there was just row after row of police vans full of guys in full riot gear at 9 o'clock in the morning, camera teams on all the platforms at the railway station, videoing everybody who got off the train. It was just extraordinary. The critical mass was about 15 people on bikes, a motley collection as you hope for and expect, on bikes, scooters, micro-pushing along scooters. And they had behind them like a huge police 4-wheel drive, like a police carrier with doors open, people pecking away on laptops. There was like 2 huge vans of riot cops following us around, 2 or 3 motorcycles, and about 20 guys running behind it in yellow jackets. Honestly, I've seen nothing like it in my life." Now, before just coming to the end of that, is this all accurate, what you're describing of the event in Derby for the G8 Environment Ministers meeting? So this is part of the interview that Mr. McCurdy conducts of you, but all this description of the event, is that physically correct what happened?
It's pretty accurate, yeah. I mean, I remember there being a huge policing response for this in Derby.
I'm going to just read that last paragraph and then going to turn to a report that you submitted to your SDS managers about that same event. Just so you can see, I had my own digital camera and I was snapping the cops. And I got stopped and turned over and searched and everything. I don't know if you read about it, but the Home Secretary signed banning orders the night before, so they made it basically illegal. An amazing thing, really. They made it unlawful to demonstrate in the confines of the whole Derby, apart from one bit in the market square. And so that was the only place. And I got told very direct, he had signed it from 12 noon, I got told. I got dragged into an alley by these two cops. Okay? Now, I wonder if you can just take this document down for the time being and move to MPS 004-1290, please. So what you were just describing to Mr. McCurdy in the interview for his PhD was the G8 Environmental and Development Ministers meeting on the 17th of March 2005. And if we look at this document here on screen, can you see intelligence dissent activists in Derby on March 17th? So this is 2005. So this is the intelligence report or the raw intelligence that you provide to your managers, but it's about the same event that you were describing to Mr. McCurdy in this excerpt from your interview. So if we go through it, several key dissent activists were present in Derby last Thursday, March the 17th, for the small demonstration that marked the visit of the G8 Environment and Development Ministers. Paul, surname unknown, maybe Chatterton, was present from Leeds, along with Privacy, surname unknown, from the Leeds Social Centre, and we can see other names mentioned there, from Nottingham descent, where they're along with Privacy from Sheffield. All were somewhat amazed at the overwhelming police presence. There were reportedly between 1,600 and 2,000 police officers on duty to police a protest by some 150 activists. The Home Secretary, Charles Clarke, had also signed banning orders, making it unlawful to protest outside of a 100-metre square box in the city's marketplace. Many considering the police response to be a sign of things to come. The presence of forward intelligence teams from Derbyshire, London, Merseyside and Cheshire was also noted. And so in relation to what you told Mr. McCurdy, in fact, you provided Mr. McCurdy with more details in relation to the event than you provided to your SDS managers. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, my SDS managers would not need to know necessarily the level of, who was deployed where and what, because if they needed to know that, they could find it out. So.
And was one of the reasons that you were content, essentially, to tell Mr. McCurdy what you were telling your managers, because this information was not particularly difficult to get. It wasn't particularly sensitive. It was well-known information. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
All right. I wonder if we could turn back to the article that we were looking at. It was UCPI 39735. I wonder if we can turn further on in that document to page 8, please. So at the top, I wonder if we can focus, please, enlarge the top paragraph. So it's 5 lines down. If you can just begin mid-sentence. So can you see it says, and this is again referring to what you said, I mean, I'm involved in dissent, organising such as it is, and we're building. I've not been to any meetings where anybody is talking about rioting. It's not on people's radar, is it? How counterproductive is that for us to go up there and fulfil all their doom and gloom expectations? It's the very, very worst thing that could happen. I'm not saying there will not be trouble, but I've been on lots and lots of protests and actions and things, and I've never seen an activist start a confrontation. But I've seen the police start it many times. Now, just pausing there, is that you being Simon Wellings saying things that you would expect an activist to say, or is that in fact accurate? Was that accurate, what you were saying to Mr. McCurdy?
No, it's me presenting myself as Wellings.
And in terms of the truth of that, I've been on lots and lots of protests and actions, and I've never seen an activist start a confrontation, but I've seen the police start it many times. Are you saying that that is not accurate?
Yeah, yes, I am.
All right. I mean that with my hand on my heart, I really have, they arrive, they are pumped up, they are testosterone fueled, they are not the sharpest pencils in the box. They don't realise when something is good-humoured or tongue-in-cheek, or and I mean, I've seen some of these pro-capitalist demonstrations. And again, the same question, is this you acting, or is there any truth in what you've set out to Mr. McCurdy?
It's me acting.
Were you ever concerned? Mr. McCurdy's doing a PhD and you're pretending to be someone else in an interview. Was that ever a
No,
concern?
I literally in the last couple of minutes when we've been discussing it, I can remember it a bit better. I think this is probably the third time he tried to get hold of me to do it. I'd certainly put him off a couple of times. I think it had got to the stage where it's just, not tenable to keep doing that. But yeah, it did absolutely cross my radar, I think, as well. I think I probably downplayed my role in Globalise a bit because I didn't want him sort of fact-checking me back to Globalise, if that makes sense.
But from these interviews, would you say that gives us a good impression of how you presented at the time to the various activists that you came
probably.
in contact with? All right. Could we please turn to page 10 in this document before leaving it? We can see, this is right at the end, so you can see the heading just below halfway, 2006-2011 McCurdy and Wellings email correspondence. So here it says much of the email correspondence between McCurdy and Wellings is currently unavailable. However, 2 2006 emails that McCurdy retained are of interest. And it says both contain references to McCurdy's family, pending birth of a child. On this angle, Wellings states that he accessed McCurdy's Flickr page to look at images of his family. Now, in relation to that, does that mean anything to you, the reference to Flickr?
Yeah, I mean, Flickr's a repository for digital photographs up on the internet.
And in terms of, and it's flagged up in this article, the topic of collateral intrusion. If someone were to say, well, it's not necessary, appropriate, proportionate for you to be accessing personal family photographs of an activist on a Flickr page. Looking back on that, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
There's a reference to the emails. So the first email stated that Wellings intends to travel to counter G8 camp in Germany, Camp Insky, and then there's a quote, that's setting up a full year early to oppose next summer's summit. Wellings remarked that, quote, I'm hoping that it'll have some of the same vibe that Sterling did, but with maybe better showers. And then a second email sees Welling invite McCurdy to attend the Sack Parliament action, stating that there's a bit of a buzz in the air about it. And so you are inviting Mr. McCurdy to attend a demonstration, Sack Parliament. Do you remember that? I'm asking you about emails sent some time ago.
I don't remember it, but it's entirely possible, yeah.
Okay. Why would you be inviting him to attend an action?
I think it would probably just be to maintain that contact between us. I don't think it was it was anything more than that, really. I probably hadn't seen him for a while.
It appears to be a quote from that last email. See if that jogs your memory. Sure, but there's going to be a potentially interesting action on Monday from lunchtime onwards. The Sack Parliament action, slight shades of V for Vendetta, and I don't know too much about it, but apparently there's a bit of a buzz in the air and considerable interest from the media. I've organised next Monday around it. I'm going to go along. Maybe you'd be interested too. Does that ring a bell in terms of the sort of email that
It's entirely possible. I have no memory of that at all, but yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to ask you just about one more paragraph in this document, then we'll take it down. It's the next page, it's just the top paragraph. So it's following on from that email, referring to the Sack Parliament event, saying it was a direct action with the intention to surround Parliament and cause parliamentary activities to cease. Now, do you remember this event?
Yeah, I've got a vague memory of it, I think.
Okay, it says it was also the first major demonstration to use images of the Masked V for Vendetta, later used by the anonymous hacking collective. Around 40 people were arrested after being surrounded by police, and one photographer was seriously injured. It is not known if Wellings attended the demonstration as suggested. However, it is known that the organising group was targeted by one of Wellings's colleagues in the special demonstration squad, Rob Harrison, and who was present on that day. So this is HN18. Did you have any interaction with HN18 in your persona as Simon Wellings? Did you see him on any actions, either this one in particular, Sack Parliament, or generally? And you've got your...
Yeah. Yes, I did. Not in England.
Okay.
Or indeed Wales.
All right. I'm going to wonder if we can take that document down. Something that you referred to in those interviews with Mr. McCurdy were the FIT teams. I just want to ask you a few questions about the forward intelligence teams. What interaction did you have with the FIT teams outside of your persona as Simon Wellings? Was there any contact between you and the FIT teams?
No, none at all.
Your managers, would your managers, as to your knowledge, have had any meetings with or communication with the FIT teams?
I don't, not directly. I'd be very surprised if that was direct contact with people on the actual FIT teams. I think it's entirely possible that they would have had contact with the FIT teams management in Public Order Branch. But
so in terms of course, the FIT teams taking photographs, following certain activists around, and obviously that would not be productive from a police perspective if you were someone that was photographed and pursued. But as far as you were aware, was there anything done to prevent that happening to you? Or were you told about that, or something simply just not in your knowledge?
not that I'm aware of. I was followed around by a FIT team on a couple of occasions. I'm fairly confident they had no idea who I really was.
On those occasions that you were followed by the FIT team, I can ask you about those. Was Emily Apple present at any of those times that you were followed around by FIT teams?
No. Although I saw her being followed by FIT teams on a number of occasions when I was out doing other things. Because there would be more than one FIT team on a demonstration, or if there was a big protest or something going on in central London, sometimes there appeared to be half a dozen of them.
In relation to the times that you saw Emily Apple being pursued by FIT teams, could you just help us with those occasions, please? How many times did you yourself see this happen?
I can certainly recall 2 occasions. It might have been 2 or 3.
And those 2 occasions, could you provide us with a little more detail about what you recall of seeing Emily Apple interacting with FIT teams, please?
I can recall being up in Whitehall for something. I couldn't, forgive me, I couldn't tell you what. And she had, well, it just looked like she'd been quite recently picked up by one of the FIT teams and was just, I was walking one way down Whitehall and she was coming up the other way, and I just saw her with a couple of, the FIT team officers following her behind very closely.
you put your hands out. What does that mean?
Sorry,
in terms of, is that in relation to what they were doing?
That means that it struck a rather odd sight. She was, walking along Whitehall with, two uniformed FIT team officers, really quite close behind her.
So that's one occasion. What about the other occasion in particular? Could you just help us with that?
I can't remember exactly where we were. I saw her up on something else in the City of London, I think, and she was coming down one of the roads and was walking quite quickly and looked a little bit distressed, and she had a FIT team behind her again.
What you've just described sounds like you just saw her for a few seconds on each occasion. Is that right?
Yeah, I think on one of the occasions I saw her again probably an hour or 90 minutes later, and they were still sort of stuck to her like glue.
I wonder if we can just bring up a document. It's MPS 007 4599, please, which is, so your tab B99, and that is in volume 3. And it's page 6 of this document, please. So in this document, you can see at paragraph 3, reference to you in this context, an extremely useful role performed by RW, so Ringwraith U, is the provision of briefings on issues around activism and protests from the activist standpoint that can be used to brief officers involved in public order policing, CO11, TSGs, FIT teams, etc. Two particular papers on, firstly, the current view held by activists of Metropolitan Police public order policing policy, and secondly, their attitude to SOCPA provided extremely useful for the relevant Gold Commander in charge of policing demonstrations in Westminster and directly impacted on the policing plan. Now, in terms of the reference here to your role being extremely useful in briefing officers, particularly in relation to the FIT teams. Could you help us? What is that a reference to? Because from your earlier description, you were never briefing the FIT teams yourself.
No. And they would never, that wouldn't be a very good idea for obvious reasons. I mean, I wouldn't want the FIT teams to treat me any differently on the street if they saw me, and if I'd been briefing them face to face. Clearly they're going to know who I am. But I can remember being asked to put something together about SOCPA, but
I wonder if this may assist. I wonder if we can take this document down and move to MPS 006 9945, please. So this is in your tab C425, which is in volume 8. Now, the document we were just looking at referred to you providing helpful briefings, and one of them referred to the current view held by activists of the Met Police public order policing. And this document here, does this, have a look at it closer, does that look familiar to you? SDS branch note, September 2006.
Yeah, vaguely, yes.
And so if we look at the beginning of it, this note deals with the attitude of political activists to the effectiveness of the Metropolitan Police Service's public order policing. It is written from the point of view of activists, drawn from both anarchist, autonomist groupings and from more organised groups of protests that might be mobilised by organisations such as the Socialist Workers' Party. Now, this document goes on, but this is this what you believe was one of the documents referred to in the previous item in terms of briefing the FIT teams?
Yeah, quite possibly, yes.
So if we go perhaps to page 6, please, in this. Thank you. Yes, sorry, last page, thank you. So, penultimate paragraph, one police tactic that has proved effective in recent years is the use of forward intelligence teams, FIT. They have been able to disrupt the activities of key individuals on the ground by close, overt surveillance. This can and has worked to the activists' advantage, however, where police FIT teams have been led away as they are tasked against the same old faces, effectively following a decoy away from other clean skins who will attempt to organise on the ground in their place. In relation to that description there, these are your words saying that they have been able to disrupt the activities of individuals, activists. So on that theme of disrupting activities, what did you mean by that? Because here what you're saying is that the forward intelligence teams are effective and can disrupt the activities of key individuals. What did you mean by that?
Well, I meant that if you put extremely overt, close, police presence behind somebody, it's clearly going to disrupt their ability to do whatever they were hoping to do that day.
If it was said that this sort of action has, and some of the words that have used to describe it, a chilling effect on legitimate protest, what would your reaction to that criticism be? That here you are, an undercover officer, giving feedback saying the FIT teams are effective, they are effective in disrupting activities of key individuals. What's your response to the potential criticism that, well, in fact, what's happening, it's having a chilling effect on legitimate protest? What would your response be to that?
I think looking back on that, I would say, yeah, it's quite possibly the case.
And so looking back on that, and just to be clear in relation to that, the chilling effect on legitimate protest, do you have any concerns looking back on the nature of your work in particular as an undercover officer, but more generally the SDS, doing just that, having a chilling effect on legitimate protest? Do you have concerns about that, or not?
I hope that's not the case, but I can see that the criticism, in some areas would probably be justified.
And in terms of, for example, Emily Apple, there are a number of undercover SDS reports on Emily Apple. Would you agree that the risk of reporting multiple times on individuals has the effect of increasing the attention they received by, for example, forward intelligence teams? So by having a large amount of reporting about specific individuals, that intelligence goes to, for example, forward intelligence teams, and therefore these individuals suddenly receive a huge amount of attention from, say, the FIT teams in an inappropriate way as a result of SDS reporting. What would you say to that criticism, that connection, that you're over-reporting on certain individuals, and the result of that intelligence doesn't go into a box, it is disseminated, and it results in activists such as Emily Apple being, as you describe it, followed around?
Yeah, I can see there's a clear risk there. You can end up being very well traced for being well traced, if that makes sense. The amount of reporting that went in would clearly, I hope that there were checks and balances above that to try and ensure that those people, were a legitimate target of that type of activity. But I can see the risk, yes.
I wonder if we can take that document down. Could we please move to MPS 0073090? So this is in your tab C445, which is in volume 9. I wonder if we could please turn to the top of page 2 of this. So we can see this report here. Sorry, if we can just go back to the first bit, just for context, so we can see top right, this is a 29th of March 2007 report of yours. And we can see the format of these process reports changed by this period. But if we can go to the top of page 2, please. And says the group were not unduly surprised that the meeting was covered by a police forward intelligence team, FIT, although the presence of a uniformed police spotter from Brighton was considered somewhat unusual. It was remarked upon that the FIT had apparently arrived in one of their own private cars rather than a marked police car. And so in relation to that, you had an awareness of FIT teams from your perspective as an undercover officer.
Yes, I knew they existed. Yeah.
I wonder if you can just zoom back out of that, please. I want to go to another of your reports, please. Could we go to MPS 0073081? It's in the same volume. It's tab C443, please. So this is your report about DSEI Arms Fair 2007 organising meeting. And if we see, you can see the just about a third of the way up, can you see it is likely there will be police photographers outside the meeting that you may wish to wear a scarf in this cold weather. And what you've done here is you've copy-pasted an email, haven't you, from the particular group Disarm DSEI. So this is not your words, this is your copy-pasting an email in an email group, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
And so again, you were aware, this reference to police photographers, is that, again, another reference to the FIT team?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yes, definitely.
All right. Could we please take that down and move to MPS 0074614, please? So this is in tab C470. It's in volume 9. I wonder if we could turn to, again, this is the raw reporting from you. If you can go to page 14, please. So here we have an example of your raw reporting. Privacy continues to attempt to build practical opposition to the Met Police's FIT teams. Privacy, in conjunction with Emily Apple, continues to, appears to be a typo, but continues to in her attempts to build opposition to the Metropolitan Police's forward intelligence team's FIT. Her initial call to arms, distributed to various activists and e-lists, is attached below. Thought some of you may be interested in the following call to action, read the FIT team and police surveillance. This may be relevant to those attending dissent meetings. We have all been pissed off to varying, I wonder if we can just go to the next page, please. There's varying degrees by their habit of camping outside meetings. Perhaps we should consider what our future response should be. Pictures taken outside the Reading dissent meeting of an individual attempting to hide her identity were recently used by the Met as intelligence to try and justify remanding me in custody for a crap charge of obstruct police. It was supposed to indicate that I was the sort to commit offences. The original charge didn't even have anything to do with the G8 or dissent. Fortunately, the argument didn't wash, but clearly the police are now happy to use photos of people at meetings to try and indicate criminality. Anyway, the following call-out is for a DSEI meeting on Saturday, but I'd be interested in people's thoughts on the general theme, and check out the blog spot, and that's given there. I wonder if we can continue. If we can zoom out again, please. If we can just... All right. And then it's here, take action against the cops, take action against the fit teams, 30th of June 2007, University of London, Union, Mallet Street. A call for solidarity outside the next disarmed DSEI public meeting, and every time there is a forward intelligence team presence at a meeting or a protest. At the last disarm public meeting, as with every other public meeting called by the group since 2002, there were police in attendance from the Met's fit teams. For anyone who doesn't know, these are the cops who are paid to harass anarchists and the far-right football fans and Islamic fundamentalists. They follow known people on protests and they stand outside public meetings taking photos and writing copious notes. The personal is political. Over the last 6 years I've been harassed, wrongfully arrested, assaulted and driven to a nervous breakdown as a direct result of the treatment I have received from the fit teams. I know people who will not attend meetings or protests because they can't deal with the fit teams. I do not want to watch another person being driven to the edge by their actions. I do not want to hear of one other person being discouraged from joining our actions because of their behaviour. Now, just pausing there, this is copy-pasted into a report to your managers, and there's reference here from Emily Apple describing the effect on her, her words, driven to a nervous breakdown as a direct result of the treatment received from fit teams. Now, in the context of what the document we looked at earlier, of you saying that the use of fit teams is effective and in relation to disrupting particular activists, were you concerned about Emily Apple when you read that? Were you concerned about her?
I don't recall being concerned about her, no.
I wonder if we can please take that document down and go to MPS 007-6324. So this is your tab B138 in volume 4. I wonder if we can... This is, again, one of the authorities for your undercover deployment. I'm going to ask if we can turn to page 2, please. Now, on this page, if we just read from the top, UCO Ringwraith continues to provide excellent strategic and tactical intelligence on the autonomous anarchist scene in London, the UK, Europe, it says there, and Australia. After just pausing there, not concerned with anything in particular that you did abroad, but the reference to Australia, does that mean anything to you?
I can only think of one activist that I was quite close to who had returned to Australia by that point.
For the avoidance of doubt, did you ever travel to Australia as part of your SDS undercover operation?
No.
All right. After UCO RW's successful operation during the Camp for Climate Action in August, his recent focus was on the biannual Defence Systems and Equipment International DSEI exhibition, which was held in Docklands between 11th and 14th of September. A pre-meeting was held with officers from the extreme left-wing desk, which resulted in very favourable feedback. UCO RW has submitted 23 reports in this review period. Some of the more notable reports are as follows. Now, just before we go on, that feedback from the extreme left-wing desk, very favourable feedback, was contained in this authorisation, but did that feedback ever reach you?
No, I don't think it did. No.
All right. I wonder if we can just go to the next paragraph, please. So it says that RW continues to report on the anti-fit activists, Privacy and Emily Apple, who want to disrupt the fit team's effectiveness in public order situations. There have now been several instances of activists setting out to frustrate the fit as they attempt to carry out their duties. This has involved activity such as trying to physically obstruct the movement of the officers and holding up sheets or tarpaulins to block the photographer's view. DCI Flood will take this difficult issue forward at a senior level to try and reduce its impact on future public order events. Can you just assist us in relation to that last reference? DCI Flood will take this difficult issue forward at a senior level to try and reduce its impact on future public order events. Was this something that you had any awareness of or not?
No, not at all.
Could we please take that document down and turn to 0526 933? So this is in your tab B89, volume 3. And this is a long document. I wonder if you could turn all the way. This is a collection of a number of your CHIS authorisations. I want to go down all the way to page 52, please. All right. Now, firstly, in this, I'd like to ask you about, can you see the redaction block in the middle of the page?
I do.
Just below there's a paragraph. I wonder if we can just focus in on that. So here it says that you, RW, also immersed himself at the climate action near to Heathrow Airport in August 2007, and again his product was of the highest quality. It prompted Commanders Broadhurst and Kay to personally thank DS, it's redacted, from the DATDE Public Order Desk, and obviously by association RW. He has also been able to closely monitor the activities of Fitwatch, led by hardened anarchists Emily Apple and Privacy, which seeks to disrupt the FIT team at public order events. The description of Emily Apple as a hardened anarchist, is that something that originated from you, do you recall?
No.
What is your reaction to that description in this authorisation of Emily Apple as a hardened anarchist?
I think probably Emily Apple wouldn't object to the use of the word anarchist, but I think hardened is rather strident and unnecessary possible.
In terms of the disruption of the FIT team, so here it was saying that you have been able to closely monitor the activities of Fitwatch. How were you able to closely monitor the activities of Fitwatch? Is that accurate?
No, it's not.
Again, you were in the SDS for a number of years. You described it as an elite unit. Are you concerned to read sentences like that are inaccurate in documents which are essentially authorising your deployment? Are you surprised? What is your reaction to reading? Because here it says that you have been able to closely monitor the activities of Fitwatch, and your evidence just now is that that's not correct. How do sentences like that appear in these authorities? What's your view on the number of inaccuracies in these documents? What's the cause of that, do you think?
I don't know what the cause of it is. I would imagine it's someone making a case to get an authorisation through the system again, and perhaps not being properly familiar with that particular officer's work. Or perhaps, I don't know. I'm not cited on it. I have no idea.
Would you agree with this observation that as the SDS reached its closing year, so 2007, the beginning of 2008, as it approached that period, that the description of the utility of the reporting was exaggerated in order to help continue the SDS? So, for example, we have references to people being extremely close, monitoring all of these organisations, very, very good infiltration of groups, wide knowledge, and the description that's given. Would you accept as a general observation that as the years went by, this became increasingly exaggerated with increasingly inaccurate information to try and big up the SDS? Would that be fair?
I think there's a clear element of some exaggeration, yes. And I'm surprised because there was no, if this was that date, there was no prospect of being, reauthorised going forwards anyway.
Before we break for lunch, I just want to ask you about a specific topic, and it is reporting on Muslim groups. Were you ever asked to provide any particular intelligence on people from the Muslim faith or Muslim community? Was that ever mentioned, perhaps earlier in your deployment or as a target? Does that?
I don't think so, no.
I just want to ask you about a couple of your reports, and just in that context, it may help to refer you to the specific documents. Could we please put up on screen? It's MPS 307357. This is in your tab C38, which is in volume 4. This is going back, it's a report of yours from the 15th of November 2001. But you can see this is in your Groundhog Day days, Muslims for Justice and Peace. So the report of yours states, a Muslim woman who attended the South London Stop the War Coalition rally at St Matthew's Church, Brixton Hill, on the evening of Monday the 12th of November, distributed flyers to other women, apparently downloaded from the internet, detailing a new group, Muslims for Justice and Peace. One of the organisers is apparently an individual named Privacy. The ethos behind the group's formation is apparently to attract those Muslims who are naturally disinclined to get involved politically in a movement which is so dominated by groups such as the SWP and CND. The group apparently have an email address or website, and it's provided there. Could you help us with why you reported on Muslims for Justice and Peace?
I mean, it was just as a part of activity that you saw or came across that could be of potential interest for the desk.
Could it simply be as a result someone's giving out flyers or leaflets, you pick up the leaflet and you do a bit of research on it, have a look at the website? Could it be something like that?
Possibly.
Okay. Could we take that down and move to MPS 006910? So this is at tab C14, which is in volume 4. It's a report, it's quite an old one of your reports, it's 5th of October 2001. So you can see this is focused, or the title of it is Arrow Activity, and we can see the description of that group, Active Resistance up to Roots of War, but it's the last sentence that I want to ask you about. It says, the meeting attracted a number of Muslim women, two from Afghanistan. Also present was a woman from the pressure group Women in Black and a representative from CND. Was there any particular reason that you referred to a number of Muslim women? Is this you hoovering up all the information that you could find? Or was there any specific reason why there is such reference in your reporting?
No, not really. I mean, I would have been out for 35 days. I think from just doing the mental maths in my head, it would have been very, very early days of my activity, and I think I was, literally must have been one of my very first reports, I would have thought. But
I wonder if you can take that down, and just one more report from your very early days before we move a little later. If we could turn up, please, MPS 006968, so at your tab C19, again in volume 4. This is a report less than a week later, so this is the 11th of October.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to see the paragraph breaks, but it's the second paragraph. Can you see it says a number of local residents and students who would not normally describe themselves as being politically engaged, or in some instances even sympathetic to the left, also attended. In total, nearly 30 people were present, including two Muslim men who joined the meeting almost as it finished at 8:45 p.m. Again, this is going back right at the start of your deployment, as you've just indicated, but there seem to be a number of references to either men or women being Muslim. Did that ring any bells in terms of what you were asked to look at, or was it something that you yourself just felt that was relevant?
I think it was just something I must have felt relevant at the time, perhaps to make them identifiable if it was required to, but no, there's no agenda there.
Now, we're going to move forward in time to 2004, and the next report I want you to look at is MPS 0032255. It's tab C294. This is in volume 7. It's a report of yours, and the inquiry put a date of the 25th of March 2004 to this. So this is the year that you leave Globalised Resistance. But again, in terms of this report here, it is a series of your reports. Turn to page 2, please. It's the top report. We can see Globalised Resistance, privacy as an activist for Globalised Resistance. He has recently moved in with an Asian female friend after previously living alone for some years in a bed-sitting room in the Camden area. He is to rent a pair of rooms from the woman, a bedroom and a smaller room that he intends to equip as an office. The pair are not a couple in the romantic sense, and it is understood that the female friend has considerable trust issues with men, and that privacy is the only male friend she has that she would ever consider allowing into her home on a permanent basis. The friend apparently works in radical theatre and enjoys close links with the Muslim community in the West London area, particularly in women's groups and community care projects. And so in terms of this reporting, so this is not right at the start of your reporting. This is 3 or so years into your deployment. Why are you reporting on someone who has links with a Muslim community group?
Again, just in the context, I mean, it looks like the focus of that particular report is actually the male, described in the first paragraph. And it's just some detail around that, really, some extra detail. It's just the kind of detail we were asked to provide.
And in terms of the reference to an individual having trust issues with men, and we can see the description there. Do you agree that looking back on such reporting that it was inappropriate to go into that detail about individuals that were not your targets?
Yes, I would.
All right. One last item I want to refer you to before we break for lunch. It is in relation to HN72's witness statement. Now, something that HN72 set out in his witness statement I want to ask you about before we break for lunch. It's at MPS 0749345, and I wonder if you can go to page 160, because I want to ask you about what is set out in paragraph there. So if we can come out of this document. So it's paragraph 351, okay? So it's about 6 lines up from the bottom. Can you see it says, some of HN118's targets were taking advantage of a free kitchen in a mosque somewhere in South London. I think this is what you referred to when you were talking about your discussions with Mr. McCurdy. Is that?
Yeah, possibly.
The kitchen in the mosque. So some of HN118's targets were taking advantage of a free kitchen in a mosque somewhere in South London. HN118 said at a meeting that he was well placed to report on the level of extremism in the mosque. I refused. I think that was beyond collateral intrusion and more like targeting. I was pleased that he raised it and he responded to my views. Now, do you recall that, as described by HN72, you say, well, look, I'm well placed to report on extremism in the mosque, and HN72 saying words to the effect, well, thanks for bringing that to my attention, but no, it's collateral intrusion. Does that ring any bells at all?
Yeah, it does. Not really in the context of collateral intrusion. It was more that there were there was a suggestion that there might be some activity around that particular place. Right. But he definitely told me to stay in my lane and told me to back off, and I did.
So I don't know if that's a convenient time to break for lunch.
Certainly. We'll resume at 2.